Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you, to talk about the Berkeley Lab of the Future. You've heard me say this before, that it's a great privilege to lead this great laboratory. It's true now more than ever. I am proud of the dedication, creativity, and resilience that 5,000 people of this laboratory have shown over the last 7 months. No leader of a large institution is blessed with a better group of people to work with. Today, I'm going to talk mostly about the Berkeley Lab of the Future. By that, I mean not the next year, but the next 20 years. I am presenting all that we are doing to make sure that we have this great laboratory 20 years from now doing great research. Of course, I'll include some discussion about how we'll manage in the year ahead of us. In July 1945, on another crisis for the nation, while US troops were still fighting the Pacific, Vannevar Bush delivered a famous report, The Endless Frontier, where he made the case that the nation needed a strong research enterprise in peacetime to advance the health, economy, and security of the country. And he emphasized this as a national imperative to sustain a strong scientific workforce. His ideas did much to shape the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, and the DOE laboratories. So as we look today at what the nation needs from us, in fact, we go back to those same principles. We need scientific solutions addressing national priorities, energy, health, resilience, the environment, and the economy, discovery science. It was really thrilling to see Jennifer Doudna winning the Nobel Prize in Chemistry this year, someone who has a long history of engagement at the laboratory and somebody who we're very proud of. We also are looking at unique scientific capabilities and facilities. National user facilities and advanced instrumentation is what we bring uniquely to the national complex. The managed large research teams, which is the way we do our research here. We develop important technologies with long, risky R&D paths. And this year, I've added to this list response to national emergencies. It's always been there since the first year of this laboratory, but it's more obvious today. And perhaps most importantly, we provide the nation a diverse group of highly trained, creative individuals committed to work together in teams on all of these grand national challenges. And I mean by that, all of you who are here today. This is our diverse research portfolio that I usually show, covers a broad landscape of DOE science and technology. We have about $1 billion per year, and these are our main programs. This is advanced scientific computing, biological environmental research, basic energy sciences, high energy physics, and nuclear physics. Those are the Office of Science programs that make up 88% of our portfolio, and 71% of our portfolio, and the Department of Energy, counting the energy programs, make up 88%. We have excellent balance of 3 approaches to our research. We have the user facilities, large team science, and the core research program. And let me say that we have every reason to believe that the strong national support we've seen in the last few years will continue in the near future. I have every reason to believe that we will continue at this level of funding or perhaps slightly above. These are our areas of research and the people who lead them. I want to give special recognition to Deputy Lab Director for Research, Horst Simon, who's in his 11th year in this role of helping to grow the lab's research portfolio, and what a job he has done in that. Each of the six ALDs for the 6 areas is responsible for the stewardship of a large research enterprise about the size of a single program laboratory, and for working with the lab director and the deputy directors to manage the lab's integrated research. The research division directors have the principal responsibility for managing the lab's research directly. And let me say, no lab has as strong a set of research leaders taken together as we do. We have two new ALDs this year, Jonathan Carter in computing sciences and Natalie Rowe for physical sciences. Thanks to Kathy Yellick and James Simons for their great service. And our new division directors since the last time I gave this a year ago include Polly Arnold in chemical sciences, Christine Pearson in molecular foundry, Robert Kostevsky in energy storage and distributed resources, and Susanna Tringe is the interim director for environmental genomics and systems biology. Equally important to our success are the operations division directors shown here. New in their current roles are Maria Nappi, John Chernowski, David Van Dam, Adam Stone as interim CIO. But more importantly, this is actually as a group. All of these people have been here perhaps at most about 2 years in these roles. And they've really shown their mettle in the last 7 months. The organizations that they run have done a terrific job. And in this period of the COVID-19, we have all benefited from it. Great science requires most of all great scientists, and they represent our greatest strength as a laboratory. To stay at the top of global research, we need to be able to make breakthroughs earlier than others, and ensuring that the DOE is recruiting the best scientists in the world is critical to the mission. So we make the point that our scientists have won 13 Nobel Awards, now that we've had Jennifer Doudna into that group, and 15 National Medals of Science or Technology. And our world-class scientists have also leaders in being elected to the National Academies of Science and Engineering, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and the new fellows of AAAS. We have 2 of our ALDs have joined this group lately. Susan Hubbard, a new member of the National Academy of Engineering, and Natalie Rose, new fellow of AAAS. But I want to point out also that our early career research programs help us develop the next generation of research leaders. And my one recommendation, as people ask, what should the Department of Energy do differently? I think they should double the size of their early career research programs in the Office of Science, and should start these programs as well in the energy programs. I think they're the most important investment we can make right now in our future. As you know, much of the lab's breakthrough research takes advantage of our 5 national user facilities, which provide a foundation, a platform for much of our national impact. That's the Advanced Light Source and the Molecular Foundry, funded by the Basic Energy Sciences, NERSC and YesNet, funded by Oscar, and the Joint Genome Institute, funded by Biological Environmental Research. All of these have crucial roles in the national research portfolio, but also especially for our own research here at the laboratory. And they also have all taken a critical role in the last 6 months as we've worked our way through this difficult period. Much of what I give here in this part comes from our annual lab plan I present to the Office of Science every year. We talk in that about our 5 strategic priorities to shape the future of the lab: chemistry and material science, especially with the upgraded Advanced Light Source, as well as the Molecular Foundry that we are upgrading as well. Discovery science and fundamental physics. We're building instruments that will enable discoveries in hydrogen physics and nuclear physics. And we'll talk some more about these in a moment. Computing sciences enabling scientific discovery, not only NERSC and YesNet, but the computational and math research and data science that boost all of the lab science. And new capabilities in biological environmental science, including JGI, JBay, BioEpic, and the science and the SFAs, the science focus areas. Our 5th priority is infrastructure renewal. And this includes new research facilities like the new integrated genomics building, which was shown building here and is now proudly across the street and doing great research. Then within those priorities, we use lab-wide initiatives and area initiatives to ensure the nation will get optimum benefit of our integrated laboratory. And just to remind you that we use this LDRD, Laboratory Directed R&D program funding, to initiate new capabilities, as we have several of our capabilities now at the laboratory, like the Molecular Foundry and JBay, to reduce technical risk for major projects like ALSU and our new CMBS4 hydrogen physics experiment, to integrate across programs as we've done successfully in AI for science and quantum information, and to develop leaders of the future. It's our own investment in the early career program. This year, for our lab-wide initiatives, we have 4 continuing LDRD initiatives: energy efficient microelectronics, solid state energy storage, genetically coded composites, and the early career LDRD. But we continue to support, beyond LDRD, programs, initiatives that were very successful and are now developing into long-term, integrated into the long-term research program in the laboratory. And those are AI for science, quantum information, science technology, Water Energy Resilience Research Institute, bioepic science, and electron microscopy. So I'm going to take a closer look for a few minutes, just pick out a very few of these initiatives to spend a little more time on. One of our priorities is discovery science and fundamental physics. And here, our new strategic initiative is the Cosmic Microwave Background S4 initiative, CBS4. CMBS4, we just learned a little while ago that we're the lead lab for that. These are building millimeter wavelength telescopes to be installed at the South Pole and on the high Atacama Desert in Chile. This would be a $600 million joint DOE-NSF project. It's a very large project and very important for us, with partners at Argonne, SLAC, Fermilab, University of Chicago, and others. In this competition to be lead lab, we emphasize our really great record of leading large projects, building facilities for the benefit of the large hydrogen physics scientific community, like the DAISY project, which we just installed at Kitt Peak and just received CD4, and the LZ project in South Dakota underground that also just received CD4, meaning project completion. This is going to be a big part of our future for the next 10 years and beyond. Another strategic priority for us is computing sciences enabling scientific discovery. And here we execute much of our most impactful research is through deep partnerships and team science between computing scientists, mostly in the computing science area, and domain scientists around the rest of the laboratory. And in fact, of course, at other labs and universities as well. We probably have the most successful integration of computing sciences with those other research areas of any lab. And this is key to so much of what we do here. Our largest single project at the laboratory, and most important, is the ALS upgrade. The upgrade of the advanced light source, which has been here now about 30 years. And with excellent support from BES, we've made rapid progress in the last year on the ALS upgrade. This is the leadership team led by Dave Robin and Robbie Lefwich-Van. The project received CD3A approval last December, which allowed us to start long lead procurements. But then the LSU team made a remarkably smooth transition to working remotely in March. And then we started to bring them back for the people who needed to be on the site, like scientists and engineers working on R&D projects. We're focused very much on completing the preliminary design and preparing for a baseline CD2 review. That's the baseline that sets how the project will go in the future. That review's November 17 to 20th. We just held a very successful director's review that showed we're prepared for that. A lot of the work that I hear outside my window here at the laboratory is the work in the Bayview area on our bio campus. As you know, we've already installed the IGB building, Building 91. We're designing Building 92, the bioepic facility, to be built right next to 91. The design is well developed and has been tuned and adjusted at several points to match the research needs. We're working on a schedule of starting that in and the last quarter of this fiscal year. Despite all the disruptions of the last few months, this has been extraordinarily challenging to work through this, but we're working through it. And here we also have a first advanced look at the third bio building, which we are planning to be next to BioEpic as we build this. And this really is building a good part of the laboratory of the future. It's not just buildings, though. We also just announced a new energy storage center to support U.S. leadership in energy storage utilization. With a secure domestic manufacturing base, we just announced Noel Bakian as the distinguished leader in DOE energy research to be the center director. She will work with our strong team of researchers across many facilities and centers of the laboratory to accelerate the technology innovation process and strengthen the connections between our lab, other labs, industry, and users at all research stages. Now, this is, I know, a very busy slide, but it's to make a point. Even as we were putting the lab in safe standby mode in March, lab researchers were identifying COVID-19 research topics and coronavirus research topics in which our unique resources and expertise were essential. We are pleased to be part of the great collaborative effort, which came to be known as the National Virtual Biotechnology Laboratory. And the laboratory is working together with the SC, Office of Science Program offices, to choose projects and get them authorized and funded quickly, really very rapidly on the usual scale. That in months, people were actually showing research accomplishments. So this shows a fraction of all those projects at the laboratory. It's a very impressive effort. I'll just say that Berkeley Lab is fortunate to have such a wide-ranging expertise and great facilities that allow us to be nimble and pivot to conducting critical work that in this case is supported the pandemic response, in general, supporting the immediate needs of the country. So then moving to other topics in building the lab of the future, we'll just say the country is making large investments to build that Berkeley Lab of the future. We've embarked on a massive effort to rebuild the laboratory and prepare it for that future. This includes renewal of core infrastructure, things like cooling towers and HVAC controls and drain repairs and supply water, with cleanup of our sites of Bayview and Old Town, and then the new state-of-the lab research facilities that we're going to be building here. The DOE is investing about $600 million from the Office of Science on these projects, as well as the investment from the Environmental Management Program. And we're addressing several of the smaller projects with institutional support. This is a historic rebuilding of the laboratory. And you say, what will it do for us? Well, as we all know, our laboratory suffers from aging infrastructure. It's not up to the standard of our research. This year, these are our buildings and our fundamental facility infrastructure. Green is adequate, yellow substandard, red is inadequate. It's far too much red and yellow. And our plan is by 2031 that through all this work most laboratory will be in green. And you ask, why did I pick 2031? Well, that will be the 100th anniversary of this laboratory. And that's where we'd like it to be set up well for the future beyond. So then I can just pick out a couple of our major initiatives to talk about. Quantum information science technology now is becoming a mature lab-wide initiative. It's really emerged as a core capability for the laboratory. It started 4 years ago with a lab-wide coordinating committee, and started some LDRD projects. And then when the Office of Science started their initiative in FY18, we were ready and won competitions for advanced quantum testbed and research projects on quantum algorithms on software, for basic energy sciences on EFRC, Energy Frontier Research Center on quantum coherence, new instruments from Molecular Foundry, and research on superconducting interfaces. And for the High Energy Physics Office, a broad effort on quantum sensing, simulation, and analytics. But most recently, we worked with Sandia to lead a large new center, the Quantum Systems Accelerator, that will be $115 million over 5 years. And we're taking an existing building that was not in very good shape, which we're rebuilding into an on-site facility for the advanced quantum test bed. So this has really become very quickly a central part of our laboratory. We also, on the National Alliance for Water Innovation is something that about a year and a half ago we won, but we're now really getting into full speed on it with co-founding laboratories Oak Ridge and NREL to secure a resilient 21st century water supply through a circular water economy. So Peter Fisk is now the executive director, and we show here Deb Agarwal and Robert Kosewski, who have important roles in this. And we're really, after a year of road mapping, are going into full work on, they've issued the call for proposals, and we'll be getting money out the door to ramp up that program in the months ahead. This is very exciting for us. Another of our lab-wide initiatives that advanced the point that it represents a continuing core capability at the lab is artificial intelligence for science. Berkeley Lab coordinated the AI for Science Town Hall a year and a half ago, and it's done a lot to set the program for the whole Office of Science and Oscar. And we now have over 100 projects that are developing machine learning, most of them supported as part of core research programs. And really, AI for Science is now integrated across the laboratory. The speed of this transformation since 2016 has really been breathtaking. So then I'm going to move to some statements about our stewardship of the laboratory and our diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. First of all, back in October, seems like a very long time ago, we experienced what I thought was going to be our major emergency this year. We had 2 power shutdowns that were imposed on us by PG&E as they were managing the fire risk after an extended drought. You know what those were like. We actually worked through them very well. The team did a terrific job of bringing the laboratory down and then bring it back up smoothly. But we can't have this keep happening to us year after year. So we've been taking steps to make ourselves more resilient. And most notably, one example, this photo here is a few weeks ago, I watched as they were bringing in by crane these massive new generators, 2 generators capable of 4 megawatts together. Would operate actually at 3 megawatts so that we would be able to keep the north part of the laboratory up and operating even under power shutdown. So we'll be able to exercise this October 24th. So this has come together very fast. So we're developing effectively a microgrid plan that would allow us to improve resilience and keep everything, so we don't have to lose those days off because of the grid. Then, of course, we got what our real emergency was, which is COVID-19. In March, Bay Area counties became the first region to give a shelter-in-place order. We quickly moved to safe standby, keeping about 300 of our people on site. And we set up a project structure so we could organize our work coming back. We went from 400 people on site through steps to where we're now at a level of about 1,500 people on our site. We've only had a handful, 12 cases in our Berkeley Lab community. It's significantly lower than many other laboratories, and no one has contracted the COVID at the laboratory. This has been an outstanding effort by our research and operation teams working together as one lab. And I think it's a terrific accomplishment by everybody at the laboratory. The way we managed this process was back in April, we became clear we needed to approach the transition of people to the lab sites as a project on its own, with strong leaders and broad representation from across the laboratory. I invited all of these people to take important part in this transition. Gil Gilcrease and Chris Lundell led the transition leadership team. We had the research working group, the operations working group, and through that to all the parts of the laboratory. And we were really following the stewardship principles of the laboratory with highest priority on the health and safety of everybody who works here. So I want to thank all of these people and all the people who work with them who played key roles in this effort. Just this week, we're now making a transition to the organization for the next period of time, more from a project structure to more of an organization designed to manage this new normal that we'll be in for a while. And that will have Chris Lundell and Bill Johansson leading the COVID-19 working group, and then area deputies working group and operations working group with them. Ellen Ford will join Chris and Bill in leading these groups, but it's even more integrated into the operations line of the laboratory because this will be the way we will be operating for the next time. We were only as successful in having that transition because actually we've done some hard work in the last 2 years to communicate the principles of laboratory stewardship to the entire laboratory. We called in everyone at the lab, but especially our division directors and associate lab directors, to serve as strong stewards of the lab's research, its people, and its resources. And this is really the strength that we called on as we dealt with these emergencies. I don't know how we could have kept this strong cohesion across the lab without our improved employee communications that we developed, for example. So I want to really give special recognition to the way that everybody has responded to this call over the last 2 years, but especially in the last 6 months. I want to take one particular new thing to give attention to in the last year. I've taken steps to ensure the stewardship of the engineering capability of the lab. I appointed Henrik van der Lippe as newly created position of chief engineer, charging him with making sure that we facilitate common approaches to engineering across the labs. I want to establish an engineering culture at the lab that will help us recruit and retain top engineers who are excited to work hand in hand with our leading scientists to solve grand challenges in science and technology. These are some of the examples of how important that engineering capability is to everything we do. And this is giving recognition to how important it is to the laboratory and how we need to take care of that, be stewards of that capability. Finally, I've been talking about this, but I want to give special attention to our IDEA program. Last year, we launched a comprehensive and ambitious lab-wide campaign designed to engage our community in the most critical concepts of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accountability. Lady Idos led this as our chief officer, reporting to me. It was launched with a broad employee communication effort. The response was extremely positive. I feel very fortunate that we had established this strong connection with our community before the pandemic shutdown and the recent national attention to racial inequity in our society. We need to be able to have trusted communications about these issues at this difficult time. We are engaged in a deep discussion of these issues around the laboratory, and we will sustain this going forward. It's central to who we are. So in summary, and then we'll turn to questions, we have been working hard to build the Berkeley Lab of the future. We're looking ahead to see what science is needed to advance the national priorities that drive us: energy, health, resilience, the environment, and the economy. We believe that bringing some of the world's best scientists to DOE laboratories to work on these grand challenges is our most powerful tool in the global competition about advancing research. And we're fostering a culture of stewardship of our research, our people, and our assets so that we continue as a great laboratory in 2031 and beyond. So I mostly want to thank all of you here for making Berkeley Lab the laboratory it is today and helping us build the future. With that, thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take your questions.
Hi, everyone. This is John German, Chief Communications Officer. Diane Wentworth and I are going to be moderating the questions. I'd like to invite you to submit your question in the chat box in Zoom or using the Q&A feature in Zoom. We'll get to it either way. We'll try to address as many questions as we can today. We'd like to focus on high-level state of the lab questions. So if you have a question, please submit it there. Mike, the first question we have for you is, you mentioned major construction that's going on and is planned around the lab. Can you elaborate on what some of those projects are?
Yes, yeah, we do have a lot of construction. Anybody who's been around here knows how much that construction activity is going on. So first of all, we have in the Bayview area, we have the environmental management teams are working on cleaning up the remnants of the Bevatron to get ready for the bioepic facility that will be built right there. And they're also actually put in the infrastructure needed at the A6 switch there to be able to support the laboratory if we're run out of power with new generators. And then beyond that, there will be a new bio building further on in that area. So that's one area of construction. The other area in the Old Town area of the laboratory, there's been cleanup work going on. There's a new tensile building that's gone up to be a storage area for ALSU. And we're doing visioning studies on building new basic energy science buildings for chemistry and materials that we're calling the Charter Hill campus there. We're also preparing to start on the project that will tear down our cafeteria and replace it with a modern welcome center there. We also have, of course, major science projects at the ALS upgrade, NURSE 9, and ESNet 6. And finally, we have the infrastructure work that's going on that's replacing HVAC all over the laboratory and underground facilities. So those are the main projects. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of construction.
Thank you, Director. This is Diane Wentworth in StratCom. I had a question that's come in. Somebody is asking about, what do you think is the biggest challenge to the lab in order to implement your plan for 2031?
That's a really good question. We now have been so successful in getting large projects, both to do new science and to rebuild the laboratory. Our biggest challenge is making sure we do a great job in executing all those projects. The reason we get new projects is because of our science vision, because we've shown the ability to carry out new projects on budget, on schedule, and we need to keep doing it. That's our most important challenge. The other one that we're now facing ahead of us is actually coming out of the COVID era. We have to manage our return in such a way that make sure we get all the best use of our people at the laboratory. And that will be a new challenge. We'll be planning that over the next year about how to return to everybody being on site again in the future.
Thanks, Mike. Let's see, we have several questions come in about the diversity program and the status of it. I will try to summarize them all in one question. You've talked about the need for diversity lab. some are concerned about the DOE's on diversity training. Could you update us on the situation and what it might mean for colleagues? And in particular, is the diversity program still intact?
Yes. Well, first of all, and let me say, I'll start where I left off in my presentation, that the IDEA program is central to this laboratory, and will be going forward. In early September, DOE announced they were assessing all of our national labs DEI training. We have looked at those and determined that the training available, which is available to the broad lab population, and it's promoting a diverse and inclusive workforce for science and technology, as all such organizations are doing across the country. And that I announced on September 19th that they can and should continue. And I am looking forward to the fact that everybody here knows how committed I am to diverse workforce and culture of inclusion. And I'm quite confident that we'll be able to sustain this in the near and longer future. Okay.
Okay, Diane, you're up.
Give me just a second, John. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so we've had a couple of questions around the lab's sustainability and as it returns to work, and as the laboratory develops an electricity microgrid and other fire readiness modifications to the lab. What are the thoughts being put into sustainability, solar power, those sorts of options?
Yeah, well, I'll say a few things, and then to give a heads up, I'm going to let Michael Brandt say a couple things too, if he would like. We already had a strong sustainability program here, and I want to think it's one of the strongest of any laboratory, and a lot of that actually has been on the energy efficiency of the laboratory and how we've been improving that substantially over the years. What's happened is now we've added that, but how are we sustainable and able to keep the lab operating when there are power shutoffs? How are we able to operate when there are smoke conditions? So we're integrating that into our sustainability. The important thing is sustainability here is really integrated with our facilities work. And that's the one thing we have done well. And it will be even more important as we're in this period of rebuilding our infrastructure to make sure that we're rebuilding for a more sustainable laboratory in the future. So I'll say if Michael Brandt wants to speak up on this, I'll give him the opportunity, because I know it's something that he's been paying a great deal of attention to.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Well, thank you, everyone. I need to start my video. Okay, thank you. We work very closely with John Elliott and as the Chief Sustainability Officer, and there are several things that we're doing around the laboratory currently to ensure that we're using our energy wisely. We through John's efforts, we've been able to install not only metering, but automated systems to optimize the use of energy for our high performance computing, for example. We have a $250 million investment by the Office of Science, the Strategic Laboratory Infrastructure Office, and that is to upgrade our utilities, as Mike said. And as part of that upgrade project, we will be installing meters and automation so we can further use the energy, water, natural gas, electricity much more effectively. And this is all part of rebuilding our infrastructure. We also invest in non-natural gas, non-carbon producing investments, and we've made investments, frankly, in the Central Valley as part of our sustainability program and solar projects. So we have a comprehensive program, and what we can do is share more of the specifics of what we're doing to make the laboratory much more sustainable at another time. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you. This morning in the San Francisco Chronicle, there was an article about the timeline for vaccine delivery. And could you give us some idea of how that timeline may affect our restart plan?
Yeah, it was actually a good article. I recommend it to people to take a look at. And they're working with the priority groups established by the National Institute of Health and the National Academy of Sciences. And they've talked about the fact that probably the early, of course, first of all, we don't know when a vaccine will be judged safe and effective, but when it is, and the earliest that could be is in January, that they would start by vaccinating health professionals and then people with health conditions that put them at a higher risk. That's and nursing homes, jails, homeless shelters. That's about 10% of the population. Then they'd work through teachers and school staff and critical infrastructure jobs like food supply, and older adults not included in the high risk groups. That would make up another about 30%. And then they would get to the large cohort of people. And so you can sort of see through that about how that will go. The state of California set up its own review panel to judge how these priorities will go. So we can be looking forward to, over the next year, having those waves of vaccinations work through the society. And of course, it's going to, how long it will take will depend on how resistant people are to getting those vaccines, how long it will take.
Great, thank you, Mike. So we've had a question about return to the lab and what you're projecting, which is somewhat related to vaccine delivery, but what are you projecting with regards to our return to the lab timeline? And in particular, how does that relate to local COVID trends?
Well, yeah, so first of all, I can, from what I just said about the vaccines, what that can tell you is even if that goes well, we'll be well into 2021 before they could possibly get to the point that 70% of the population has been vaccinated, which is the point where you expect to really cut the prevalence down to a negligible level. So we set up a management program for managing this era that certainly would be sustainable for the fiscal year we're in now. And that's the organization that I showed you. Now, I will say, fortunately, we're in much better shape in this period of time because our community has been doing so well in holding down the incidence. The prevalence here in the Bay Area, if we were a state, the Bay Area would be the lowest prevalence of COVID-19 in the country right now. And some of the areas like the Dakotas, it's 10 or 20 times as high. So we're actually doing well, partly because our neighbors are helping us, and as well as people at the laboratory, so we can sustain this. But we will have to be able to sustain it, until that vaccines have become distributed across most of society.
Thank you, Director. By the way, we do get feedback that people love your charts. So thank you for doing those each week. It really does help us understand how we're fitting into the pandemic. Question for you back to sciences. Do you see opportunities for applying the lab's advances in biology, engineering, and computing towards understanding how the brain works?
Well, that's certainly one of the areas that we think we have a lot of capability to bring in that area. And actually, this is part of a broad issue. The difficult part is getting the different parts of the federal research enterprise to work together. And many of the things, the brain is one example, but frankly, the COVID research response has been another one, where we need to get the agencies, National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, and other areas to work together. And for the brain, it needs to be NIH and DOE. So we're trying to sustain the argument with people that they really need to, if you want to do that right, they need to take advantage of the platform technologies in the DOE, working with the NIH-funded researchers to do the best job in that. And we hope that we'll be successful in selling that for the BRAIN initiative as well.
Mike, we had a question, another question about our science mission, which was how do the lab's partnerships with universities, UC Merced, UC Davis, some of those, how do they impact our science mission going forward?
Yeah, well, as one of the reasons that this lab has been so successful is because we've been so integrated with the University of California. Now, from the beginning, from Lawrence's time until now. We have more faculty scientists, we have more postdocs and graduate students than other laboratories per capita. Now, most of those connections have been with UC Berkeley, where we have very deep and long connections, but we've had a series of programs developing ties with other University of California campuses. We had a group go out to Merced and meet with them. We had just actually early this year had a group of the lab leadership going to UCLA. Horace Simon is organizing a set of Zoom meetings with UC Davis so we can develop more programs with them and take more advantage of the strength of research in the University of California. You know, in the past, the barrier to this was seen as sort of how effective can you be when you're not at the laboratory every day? Well, we're getting a new lesson in how effective you can be with a remote research connection. And we want to take advantage of that to get deeper ties with certainly the University of California campuses, especially, as well as other universities.
Director, we have a question. You piqued some curiosity here. You mentioned the Welcome Center, and I don't think that's something that we've talked about broadly yet. Is there any more you can share about that? Target date perhaps, and what's going to be in a Welcome Center? Okay, well, let's see. I'll say a few words, and then I'll trigger to Michael Brandt to get ready to fill in some more. We started with the fact that the cafeteria complex has been old and not in very good shape for a long time, and so we got approval for a new welcome center there that will include a cafeteria. It will include some conferencing facilities. Will include a welcoming center. It'll be the places that vans can come in and drop people off. That's central to the laboratory in a much safer way in some sense than we can now do. And there are some other services, including health services, that will be able to operate there. So that's what we're going to have there. It's actually going to be a great new building for the laboratory, and we're looking forward to it. So Michael, are you able to say more about where the timeline is for that?
Sure. Right now, the project is in the final stages of design, and actually I'm pulling something up on the Welcome Center right now. This project consists of actually 3 separate items. It's going to also this is a seismic upgrade project, and so the Welcome Center itself will replace the cafeteria. It will have, as Mike said, health services. There will be an alternate emergency operations center, conferencing services, a state-of-the-art modern cafeteria coupled with a dining hall. And so we'll also have plenty of room for meeting areas. The services are intended to support our growing laboratory. And to do that safely, we will also have a companion project that will create a new transportation hub for bringing our shuttles in and dropping people off at the laboratory. The considerations for this will be to deliver the project within the next 4 years, and then in the meantime, once the project begins, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to break ground later next summer, once we receive, provided that we do receive funding on this, we will we're looking at alternate ways to provide food services at the laboratory. We'll have much more information about this in the near future. And in fact, since there is a lot of interest about this, we'll have a brief article in Elements to share more about what the Welcome Center will mean for the laboratory and the plans going forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mike, we had a question about the Dune project. Can you describe how the lab will be involved in this project and what is it?
Yeah, so there's a combined project for long baseline neutrinos that Fermilab is lead on. It's called LBNF/Dune, where LBNF is the long baseline neutrino facility and Dune is the experiment. And it will be shooting neutrinos from Fermilab, from a new neutrino source at Fermilab, to the SURF facility in South Dakota underground, where we're already involved in the LZ experiment. So this is the biggest high-energy physics project in the country over this time. And they're now just getting the design approvals. They're starting to do the construction in South Dakota right now. And there will be a massive detector underground in South Dakota. And then near at Fermilab, there will be a near neutrino detector so they can compare how many neutrinos they get early on and the beam and how many they get after going all the way to South Dakota. And the evolution of those neutrinos tells you about the way neutrinos evolve and about their properties. Now, we've been called on to take the lead for the near detector, the one that's going in at Fermilab, both in the design and the project management of that. And actually, I talked to Jim Segrist, head of the High-Energy Physics Office, about this morning, and they're trying to get that ready to move that up to get its baseline review going for LBNF Dune, and so it'll be an important role for us.
Thank you, Director. We've had one or two people mention COVID-19, and although we've been doing a great job for most people following the rules that the lab and the policies the lab has put down, not everybody is following rules at all times. Could you speak to that and perhaps share the reminder for folks that this is serious stuff and we need them to follow rules?
Yeah, well, the important thing is having heard talked to the 17 lab directors at our meeting on Friday. This is a major concern around the whole laboratory complex, and there's some amount of just the COVID fatigue and ability of people to sustain these things in the long run, and making sure that people don't, in some sense, get their guard down, because the virus is still with us, even though the area is doing well. So what we're mostly saying is we need all of the layers of protection. We need people not coming on site if they're feeling ill, need to keep their mask on, keep social distancing, keep things clean, follow all those protocols. And sometimes, of course, people keep their guard, let their guard down. They'll get a reminder that what our practices are. And if it gets to someone who does not respond to those reminders, then we would have to do something more serious to get across the message. But I want to say, having heard the other lab directors, our compliance with these rules at this laboratory is really, on the scale of these things, is pretty good. So there are some parts of the country that are not paying nearly as much attention to these rules in the community as they are in the Bay Area. And that's why the Bay Area is doing so much better than most of the country right now. So we just have to make sure that people stay with it and realize that the virus is not relaxing, and so we can't relax yet.
Thanks, Mike. We have time for one more question, but before I ask that question, I did want to just thank people for joining us, and also let everyone know we have we'll capture all of the questions that we'll have asked in the chat box in the Q&A, and we'll look to make sure those sorts of things are communicated as we go forward. But for now, I would like to ask the last question of Director Witherell, which is, you know, the annual lab plan on which this presentation is based is an opportunity to check with DOE on our mission and how we're doing, and see how the other laboratories are directing their resources and efforts. And we had a visit last week from Chris Fall, Director of the Office of Science at DOE. And this is the sort of annual PEMP scoring period for the laboratory's contractor. So just wanted to ask him, how are we doing? What is the feedback you're hearing from DOE? And how's the lab doing in its direction?
So thanks, John. Yes, we heard both at the time of the annual lab plan, we got some direct feedback from them. And it was extraordinarily positive, both about the strategy and execution of the laboratory, but also how the laboratory has responded to the last 6 months. It couldn't have been better. More recently, we had at the end of the fiscal year, we have a meeting with the site office where they give us some indication of what our grades are going to be, which we effectively get in December. And again, it reflected the fact that we were given very strong points for the execution of our mission, for how we're taking care of our people, and for our stewardship of the laboratory. And to be honest, the other perhaps most important feedback we got was the new awards we've gotten, that being put in charge of CMBS4, given a quantum center here, and other major awards to this laboratory. They do that because they trust us that we're going to do a good job with them. So right now, I think it's fair to say that because of all of you, we have a lot of trust with the Department of Energy, with the Office of Science, and we'll do everything we can to maintain that trust. So with that, I think we're at a conclusion. So just let me wind up and say, go back to where I started, which is to say, it's a great, this is the best position in the lab system, is to be director of this laboratory. And it's because of the extraordinary people that I have the privilege to lead. So I want to say to thank, as I look out at 900 of you here, thanks for your trust in me to lead the laboratory, and I trust in your ability to keep doing great research. And I look forward to having a very successful year ahead of us. So thanks very much.